If you were speaking to, say, one of the presidential candidates, regardless of who he or she is or what their politics are, and you wanted them to focus on some one thing about the federal budget, either the substance or the process, what would be at the top of your list? Recognizing that there's probably 10 things on your list, but I want to hear one thing that you think is really important that you think the next president should deal with on the budget.
I would say, certainly on the process side, convincing members of Congress that fixing the budget process does not, excuse me, necessarily mean baking certain policy outcomes into the budget process. We can have a budget process that produces what it's supposed to, a budget on time, appropriations bills on time, which Congress has been terrible at doing of late. And that doesn't mean that we automatically get certain partisan outcomes.
Sure.
They've got to focus on the retirement entitlement programs, on Medicare in particular, and Social Security to a lesser degree. And that's really a challenge of trying to balance financial risk of the elderly themselves, the financial risk of taxpayers today, and the long-term financial risk or the risk to the economy as a whole. It's not an easy thing to do. The administration has made some important steps in that direction already, but that's the elephant in the room that's got to be tackled in the budget, and it's got to be done together. This is exactly an area where it's that one party cannot drive through in that area. We saw this with the Affordable Care Act. It's continuing to be an issue because it wasn't bipartisan for various reasons, but entitlement reform has definitely got to be done in that way.
I think the overriding issue is the conflict between that policymakers face between dealing with long-term obligations and dealing with the short-term needs. The long-term obligations are long-term, and they can be dealt with via transitional plans that may take a while to phase in, but there's no reason not to think about creating them and beginning the process of phasing them in now. At the same time, we don't want to, the Great Recession and 30 years of income stagnation and widening income distribution has exposed all sorts of social issues, whether it's education or infrastructure or so on. And I don't think we should be ignoring those needs. We should not, especially not be ignoring those needs in the name of the long-term debt issue.
Mike?
I'd like to hear people talk about what I call budgeting for national power. And I think the general accounts within that subject need some modest real increases. It's sort of the flip side of Stuart's point that we need to avoid seeing entitlements keep growing and squeezing everything else and driving up deficits. Of course, national power includes the military, and I think it does need modest increases in real resources above the inflation rate. But I also think that our long-term economic power, and therefore military strength, depend as well on infrastructure, science research and development, education, and a few other categories that are within that broad domestic discretionary bin. But we should really redefine some of them as long-term power, the underpinnings of long-term national power, and try to see if we can't change the optics and the rhetoric a little bit around how we think of those accounts so we see a little more political support for them.